Hi.
Hello.
Rose, Stephen. Hey, 你们好。
你好。
Helen. Hey. 这有点黑了。
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. You can now. Everybody can share. 你们好，下午好。Rose,你开始吗？你先开始吗？
是啊。
因为现在还没有人，现在只有 Helen 来了。
Oh, yeah.
So maybe 5 minutes. Let's see.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
你还在上班吗？
Sure.
You're at your office. You're 在上班吗？I hope somebody won't interrupt you.
You might hear some noise in the background, but other than that, I don't think. I'm trying to pick a good color. I think I'll be good.
You can share screen.
Yeah, sure. Not that one, this one. And let me put it on focus mode. Focus this. Mhm.
哎，院长，
好，罗斯
哎，
凡，你好。
听说
啊，
你是生日啊？
生日快乐！
生
哎，
日快乐！
谢谢啊，
45岁了是吧？
25，
哦，我猜错了啊，我猜错了啊。
永远 forever 25
Forever 25，OK，let's。
啊，过生日一年老一年了。
Yeah, okay. I wanted to just also do it on our.
Okay, just a few more minutes and then we get started. Okay, guys. What do you think, Grace? You think you should start now or just?
哎，我们是不是可以开始了，或者再等一下？Hi, good evening, Ronnie. You're in, yeah, you're in New York, New London. 哎，你也好。啊，所以需要我们开始一个开场白吗？开始吧。Hi everybody, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our culture club. This afternoon or this evening we have culture club Chinese corner today. We have two guests, our Stefan Lord and Alia Rose. Stefan, as you might know, hi, say hi. Hi, yeah.
Hello，下午好。
Everybody, you're a famous person. So a bit introduction. Stefan Lord is a scholarship winner student. He studied at Beijing Language and Cultural University and got his bachelor degree, and now he's continuing his education. He's working on his master degree this year from this year. Congratulations to him. But he has something to say because he will say something maybe. So his Chinese really good. He specifically will want to share his findings of Chinese characters. So today his topic is on Chinese, amazing Chinese characters, which is very interesting. I'm all ears. And yeah, so another guest is our Alia Rose. I would just to say both are our Chinese teacher here. We CI Confucius Institute very happy to have you local teachers to help us to teach Chinese, which helps us on our Chinese teaching a lot. And Alia Rose is a person who mainly teach herself Chinese, and her Chinese pronunciation is super good, very good. So I find it amazingly her talent of language, because as you know, it's very difficult for one person just mainly teach herself. She actually learn some Chinese here at Confucius Institute, also minors at the university, but most of her learning language is developed by herself. Her pronunciation is very good. So I think she has something to share with us, her study method. Okay, so without further ado, the floor are yours. Who would be the first one?
I'm
Yeah.
first.
Okay,
So
good.
hello guys, welcome to my presentation. I want to let you know about my Chinese learning experience and how I decided to learn on my own and get really good. Okay, so see the first slide. Okay, so ni hao. My name is Rose Tate. I've been actually studying Chinese for 4 years. I started when I first went into UWI, and I'll tell you more about that shortly. But right now I am teaching Chinese at the Confucius Institute, and I have been to China once. That was for 3 weeks for summer camp. So success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. If you do a little every day or even a lot every day, it builds up. And then you can get great things done. So arguably Chinese language is the hardest language to learn, according to many sources. It's very complex. There are tones, there are characters. Each character is different. You might need just 2,000, 3,000 just to read a newspaper. They're very tricky as well. So I found it to be a really awesome challenge. So China, as we know, is in Asia. It's pretty far away. So we are over here. And then China is halfway across the world. So their time zone is exactly 12 hours ahead of us. So we know that our language will be vastly different from the one in China. Our language was came from England, English, and Stefan will let you know about linguistics, but is completely different. So there are 1.3 billion native speakers of Mandarin. So it is the hardest language according to some, and it's also the most widely, well, the most spoken. You had 1 in 6 chance of being born a Chinese. And there are over 50,000 characters in Chinese language. But Mandarin is only the main standard language for China. There are actually 297 different languages and dialects spoken around China. Because China is really big, but Mandarin is the standard language. So when we go all the way back, we look at how characters evolved. So unlike our language in English, which is about sounds, for Chinese, it started off with more pictures. So as you can see here on the left, this kind of looks like a horse, and then it would have evolved into this character that we use today. These are different scripts over thousands of years. So this is a woman. It kind of looks like she's sitting down, but more of these characters will be in depth later with Stefan's presentation. So I don't want to go too in depth with that. But these are just a few of the Chinese characters that are pictographic. Later, they get really complex with radicals and sounds and stuff that Stefan will explain. So the components of a Chinese character is pinyin character. So it starts with initial, a final, and then there's a tone. There are 5 tones in Chinese. 1 is first tone, second tone, third tone, fourth tone, and the last one is neutral. So I'll sound them for you and you can tell me if you hear the difference. Ma, 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 and then ma. Those are actually 4 different words in Chinese. And if you don't get the tone right, a lot of times you will not be understood. So that's what also makes it very tricky. This character is not used often, but it is one of the characters in Chinese with the most strokes. So imagine trying to write this from memory along with a couple thousand others. is pretty hard. And for me, I have a bad memory, so I really found this as a great challenge for me. So these are just the first 1,000 characters that you need to learn in Chinese, and this is probably a second 1,000. So I have passed HSK 5, which requires you to learn 2,500 words. And some words have 2 characters, some words have 3 characters. And I'll tell you more about how I did that soon. So my learning experience from the first word. The first words I learned actually was that program on TV, Ni Hao Kailan. And that was just Ni Hao that I learned. My uncles, they went to China for business. And they came back and tell me this word, meow. And I was like, what's meow? Apparently that's Ni Hao, but they were not pronouncing it correctly. And they told me about Xing Xing, and I'm like, what's Xing Xing? Xie Xie, which means thanks. So it sounds pretty different, but they were surviving, and I was like, yeah, this is interesting. And I saw this giant Chinese building, and I was like, okay, let me check it out. Oh, that's interesting. So then, unlike when I was learning in school, at Comer, when I was learning Spanish and French, there were native speakers there. I found that so interesting. They were friendly, authentic, like even at sometimes I was teaching them some English. So that was so fascinating to me because it just is a bit different when you're in school studying and it's just, friendly first spaces that you can see versus someone bringing their language and their culture to you. So that really stuck with me. So then after that, after learning a few words and doing a few classes there, I was kind of disappointed when a lot of the times when I came back to class, I kind of forgot some words. So I was like, I can't be forgetting these words. This has to stay because maybe one day I'll be able to talk with some Chinese persons. So my friend Philip, he showed me an app on his phone. And I was like, okay, huh, let me keep going. And then I kept going and I kept going and I just kept exploring and figuring out how complex. It was like I was unraveling a giant puzzle. That's how I saw that this language was. So then I made a game plan for myself. I was like, okay, so let's pretend, how did I learn English? I learned it when I was a baby and my mother kind of told me some words and I went to school and it was immersive. What aspects of English do I know? So then I just broke it down into pieces and I tried to think like if I was a baby. I remember that in school I would have learned some grammar. I know that I'd be listening to a lot of English materials. I have a lot of vocabulary. Well, my vocabulary is kind of smaller than average in English, but sometimes some Chinese persons know some words and I'm like, I don't even know what that means in English. Anyways. And then I read English materials, I write in English, I speak in English. So what if I could do that, but in the Chinese language? So then I made some goals and some lists and I'm off to finding more resources. So I dive really deep into a lot of theory in the language learning process. I was very interested in how we learn, how we pick up things, how we remember. So I just went into making sure that I got as much exposure as I could, reviewed it, and then applied it, right? So the first way for me to learn was via games because games are very motivating. And sometimes when you get that success, you start to feel good, you get dopamine release. So I found that if I could complete these levels, if I could go further, then I will be able to retain much faster. So the first app that I learned was Chinese Skill. This is my favorite app. Unfortunately, some of the features have gone paid, but I used to use this app all the time. And I completed all the levels and I wanted to go back over again. It was really addictive. So The next one, Nyan Chinese, I haven't used that and I haven't used Hello Chinese, but some persons find those useful as well. And Lingo there. And then there's this app called Clico. This app is really lovely because it breaks down and builds back up Chinese for you. So if you type in a word, you can break down the character into its components. And then you can also see what that character makes up and like that. And then there's this Xue, that's what the character is. That is an app that talks about, that gives you, prepares you for the HSK exam. So when I figured out there was an exam, that was motivating as well because exams mean syllabus and syllabus means structure. So then I looked up the word list and I used to just write them and I made flashcards. And there was even in Chinese skill the option to have an example sentence. So I worked at a museum and I had free time. So I just wrote pages and pages and pages of these words. So that goes back to vocabulary. So that was a lot of vocabulary that I was studying that way. So crossing off lists and testing myself, that was one of the most rewarding things because then when the word pop back up, that makes you feel really good. So let's see. Then there was books. So after gamifying and getting that initial interest in Chinese, then I found some books online and at the Confucius Institute. And that was good because they were structured. There's a lot of theory that goes on behind it. And they would use that in schools, which this presentation is more like an add-on to school. If you can't access school, you can learn on your own. And if you don't have enough money, resources are online everywhere. So actually my challenge to myself was how can I learn an entire language for free online? I know I'm resourceful and I will find a way. So that was my challenge to myself. And I think that I found so many good resources. Like even with art as well, there's so many things that are online. You can learn anything. So I saw that and I just went for it. So these are some of my favorite books. These are the HSK books. They would have in specifically for the exam. There is New Practical Chinese Reader. That one was used in a course at UWI, Chinese language course. I did that course because I wanted to see what structure felt like as well. And there's this Chinese visual dictionary. Some days I just open the dictionary and I just go to a section. It has 6,000 words in it. And I just go through and say, okay, well, today I want to learn what the occupations are, or today I want to learn what is in my house. And I just went over those and tested myself because I found it very helpful to learn in groups. So then there's modern Chinese grammar. Some persons say Chinese doesn't have grammar, but you're not gonna find a language without some rules and grammar. And Chinese grammar is actually pretty hard. So this book was really, really good for me. And I went through the examples and there's another book on characters that made it really interesting. I wrote down all the radicals for characters and I broke everything down. Everything I researched and I broke down. So then there's free online resources in terms of YouTube as well. My favorite resource for grammar is Chinese Zero to Hero. There are two Chinese guys and they're from Canada. They are really, really good at explaining things simply. So I used to watch all their videos and I even downloaded them. And yes. So then I said, okay, so I'm learning a lot. I'm reading some books. I am watching about grammar, but what about immersion? What do I do in English that I could do in Chinese if I was a child? How would I pick up the language? So then I said entertainment, right? But so I started to watch some Chinese movies. And when I picked up one word, I was so excited. I was like, that's a word for one. And then I would just watch this thing. And sometimes I would pause the movie and repeat the entire line that that person said. And then I would play back. No, I didn't say that right. And I repeated it again and again and again until the tones, the mood, the accent sounded the same. I know that for speaking, there's a lot of times in English when someone talks to you and you can tell that they're from another country. I didn't want that. I wanted to see how far I could go with pushing my accent and my voice and my pronunciation to be as authentic as possible. I wouldn't say I'm there, but I just really tried. I repeat everything in the apps. Apps don't get tired, movies don't get tired, not like teachers, not like people. So I replayed it and I listened. So there are two different types of learning. There's active and passive. Obviously, if you were to break down an entire movie and try to translate every sentence or repeat everything, you wouldn't really enjoy the movie. So for certain parts, I would repeat. For certain parts, I just watch the movie. But when I really wanted to understand more, I went to children's shows. Because I know as a child, 4 years old, 5 years old, you can understand children's shows. It has limited vocabulary. They speak slower. They speak in a higher pitch. So maybe if I watch some children's shows, I would catch on better. So I watched Peppa Pig, 小猪佩奇, and it was pretty cool. And she will run around, and there's some episodes that I knew already. I don't know, I'm a grown person and I know about Peppa Pig episodes, but it was cool to watch that back in Chinese. And any shows that I know I would have seen before, I try to watch it in Chinese as well. Because I know that there is lost my train of thought. Anyways. So yeah, these shows I found on an app called Yangshi, that is CCTV, Chinese television, and that was China Central Television. And they actually had an app. So I was able to watch whatever show I want. I'm not sure if the app allows you to do that anymore, but I would type in what is My Little Pony. You know, I really like that episode from My Little Pony. Let me watch that in Chinese. Or I really liked Avatar: The Last Airbender. That one was hard to learn. And I just watched whatever my favorite entertainment was, trying to immerse myself because I know I was not in China. Sadly, I'm not there now. So I need to find a way to bring it in my ears all the time, hear what pinyin sounds like, hear what Chinese sounds like, repeat it, spit it back out. Audio stories as well. So I used to listen to these on the bus. There are bedtime stories about silly things like elephant losing its ears or how high can a rabbit jump, those simple things. So I just listened to it on the bus going down because I had like probably an hour commute. And probably when I'm walking, and I also listened to it to go to bed because it was a bedtime story. You can actually set, there's this app, Himalaya. You can set how many episodes you want to hear before it stops going. So I go to sleep listening to the Chinese stories. And then whenever I could understand a full sentence, it felt so good. Yes. The thing about watching movies, you have 3 different options. You have Chinese and English subtitles. You have English subtitles, and you have Chinese subtitles, right? So I would have to pick. I'd have to pick which one I want to do today. So today I want to watch both. Today I want to be able to translate what I'm reading and pause and see what he said. And then another time, I just want to enjoy it and see what else I could pick up. So I watched it in English and see what I could pick up. And then the times where I watched it in Chinese, that was obviously the hardest one. And then sometimes when you're watching the show, it's like, wait, why are you angry? Wait, wait, you just cannot follow the story. You could feel their emotions, you could hear the words. Sometimes you get a sentence, but the story went through the window. But I still really enjoyed it. So then there's also friendships, right? Because you're speaking, but you don't have a teacher. You're listening, but you don't have a teacher. There's no one to correct you. There's no interaction. There's no back and forth in real time. Because if you're listening to textbook, the textbook doesn't talk back to you. It doesn't have a conversation with you. So then I decided to find some friends. So I went on this app called Hello Talk. I cannot remember how I found it, but it is amazing. There's so many Chinese persons wanting to learn English because in China, English is mandatory. And they're very curious about foreigners as well. So I was able to find some friends on there, and there's this feature where you can correct them and they can correct you whatever you type, and you can send voice notes. So I had a lot of friends. I talked about Barbados. I introduced them to our culture. They told me about what they were eating and what they were doing. And there was times where I would set up meetings with them and we would teach each other the language. Now this one's very tricky because it can easily go into, okay, well, this is too hard. Your English better than my Chinese. So we're gonna be speaking English through the whole thing. And the person that knows less kind of defaults to their own language. So you have to watch that as well. But I remember sending a lot of videos trying to pronounce that TH sound for one of my friends and going through textbooks and correcting them. There was this time where I read from a Chinese book, Yuan. That is a book that Chinese school children use to teach their children Chinese. So I went through that book, I recorded some poems and I let my friend listen to them and he would correct me. And then he would send I would send him some articles that I found online and he would read that, and if it was too hard, I'll make it easier for him. If it was too easy, I'll make it harder. And we just on OneNote sending back and forth different material. And there's just also another lady, she had a child. So we were able to talk to the child, and then she set up presentations with me. And she actually taught Chinese to children, so that was pretty fun. And then I met Lei Kang. Lei Kang, he came to Barbados in 2019. Yes. So when I first saw him, I was like, Nisha Shea, who are you, right? Because I didn't know him as one of the Confucius Institute teachers. I think that was kind of rude, but he was a really cool guy. So he just told me who he was, and he told me he was a missionary. I was like, you're like, a missionary for what? A missionary for Christian? So I cannot believe that there were Chinese Christians, but it makes sense because Christianity is widespread. So we just hung out. We used to read the Bible. We used to go to church together. We used to get the Bible out. He had his English to Chinese Bible and his Chinese to English Bible. His English wasn't the best. My Chinese wasn't the best, so it worked out. We read the Bible together, so I learned about Jesus, and we just picked a random chapter. And he taught me how to read, and I taught him how to read. The thing about reading Chinese, though, if you don't know the character, you can't pronounce it. So he will be able to read more than I will be able to read, but we still got it done. And then we used to hang out. I was so lucky to have him. So we used to hang out, we used to make dumplings together. There are times where I sat him down and I was like, okay, what body part is this? What body part? One time I pointed to my knee and he did not tell me the word knee. He had it like 3 syllables. And I was like, how are you supposed to go to the doctor if you're in an English country and you don't know what your knee is? What happens if something happens to your knee? But he was surviving. So we were having fun. We went to Harrison's cave. One time we went grocery shopping and I would just point to everything and ask him what it is. And then we were just having a lot of fun. Went to the museum and yeah. So then I did get the chance to go to China, but my Chinese was not enough to sit HSK1. So it was still pretty nice to see Chinese signs to go to China. But if you want to learn Chinese, obviously one of the best things to do is to go to China. But not all of us have that opportunity. Let's see. That's not the end because I still have more to say. But let me go back to this slide. I think that was mostly it. For writing, I know that I wanted my handwriting to be pretty. And there's this one thing that I see people do that I noticed. So when we read from a textbook, right? The textbook is written in Times New Roman or but if we are doing it, so when I started to learn Chinese, I was like, okay, well, we don't write in Times New Roman English. So let me find out what is beautiful in Chinese language, what's a beautiful handwriting. So then I found out about calligraphy and writing pretty. So I used to just write over and over. I had those little books with the squares. So this grade book, used to get a grade book because I didn't get any Chinese paper. So I used to write over and over in a grade book to make sure that my Chinese just fits right in the middle there really beautifully. That this stroke was not too long and this stroke was long enough. And this stroke tapered well. There was this show on YouTube, this guy on YouTube, he explained to Chinese persons how to write beautifully. So I didn't understand anything he was saying. I didn't understand anything, but I still watched his video with the audio on and I followed along and I was like, okay, whoa, that's beautiful. Let me write that too. I didn't understand what he was saying. Now I can understand that he was just talking about strokes, but I just followed him. There's this website called Hacking Chinese. That one's pretty good. He learned English and he was teaching us Chinese through English. And his Chinese was really good. He talks about a lot of different techniques for learning space repetition software. He talks about active versus passive. He argues, he gives a lot of resources as well. I'm probably going to link you guys to this website. And he talks about all the nerdy stuff that goes into learning. I know this might be a bit much for some persons, and you might just opt to go with a teacher. But if you want, this can be an add-on. Any of the techniques today that you have learned, and yeah. So let me think about what else Hacking Chinese have on his site, because he has some else. Reading children's books, anything to do with that's catered towards children. Once you have a limited working, once you pass HSK 1 or 2 perhaps, or you learn that vocabulary from the list, you can start going into more other things like learning from children's books. On this one time I made a fluency plan. Let me see if I can find that. My fluency plan actually divided into these categories, what I'm going to do every day, and how much minutes of it, and what aspect I'm going to do of it in order to get to a point where I think that my Chinese is good enough. My good enough was fluent, was good enough. When you're studying, your goal, what's your goal? My goal is to learn everything I know English and Chinese. That requires me learning my bachelor's, everything I learned from young, all the vocabulary, all the specialized, all the jargon. So I have to learn, I'm interested in art, I have to learn my art vocabulary in Chinese. I have to learn marketing in Chinese. Okay, so let me get a marketing textbook. Is these processes, avenues like this, these thoughts that you can learn to make your goals. So I was also learning anatomy for art. So what I decided to do was learn it in Chinese the same time because these are words that I don't know in English, like bone, gugu, and skeletal muscular, and all these words. Where's my tibia? All these things. So I would learn these words in Chinese at the same time. I would learn the word for gland, xian. So I actually found a book that talked about Chinese encyclopedia, kind of like science. So then I would talk about animals, and then I would learn about Yodai, which is stuff like marsupial animals that carry a sack. So if you're specializing in whatever your degree is, psychology, or if you're specializing in marketing or business, you could find word lists, you could find resources to get you to learning those words. And I learn about the universe. I watch a children's show about the universe, and there's also a book about the universe. So there's Mooskin. That is Jupiter, I think. I haven't gone over these in a while. And then I would have studied plants, drew, and read about those. I would have read about the body, anything I was interested in. And you can find inspiration as well. Like there was this one guy, he came to Barbados and we were having a conversation. I met him at the Confucius Institute. We were talking a lot. I was having fun and we were sharing jokes and memes. And then he told me his first language is not English. And I was like, what? He told me he learned English in his bachelor's. And I was like, what? And he's here at UWI doing his master's in English. I want to do my master's in Chinese. What? So I took inspiration and that was my goal and I took it and I ran with it. So you have to look for persons online that are doing what you want to do. There's polyglots I look at. There's this one girl that spoke like 20 languages. There's this little girl that speaks like, she's like 4 and speaks 7 languages. I'm like, okay, well, these people aren't superhuman. They're just smart and have techniques. There's nothing you can't learn. Don't tell yourself you can't learn anything. I learned all of this for free online. I can have decent conversations with Chinese persons. So it was just fun. Yeah. So anyone has any questions? I know this was intense. I can talk more about the resources that I have. I made sure to get one for each category.
Hi, good evening.
Good
Sorry.
evening.
Hi. Yeah, good. That was good and pretty inspirational. Which city in China would you like to visit?
I would like to visit Suzhou again and Beijing, but that's because I've been there. I need to explore Sichuan and be able to eat their food, spicy. I don't know if I can handle that. We'll see. So I just anywhere, just take me anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah, just take me anywhere.
Okay, be careful what you wish for.
No, I don't mean that kind of anywhere. I mean like any of the provinces.
Yeah, but I'm glad you're open-minded. There's a lot to learn, a lot to see there, a lot of great experiences to be had, as long as you're adventurous. So
Yes.
I wish you well in your adventures there.
Thank you. And one of the most interesting things about learning Chinese the way I did it because it was interesting, because it was like unraveling a puzzle. But when you speak to a Chinese person and all of that, you sitting up with a lamp, you're working characters, Chinese characters. When that comes to life, you can communicate with someone. That's so beautiful because now I have the ability to communicate with how many? 1.3 billion people that I couldn't communicate with before, right?
Awesome.
Yeah. So when you've been studying and you've been going through lists and it just feels like a long drab, and you go to speak to some Chinese person, you can explain a certain thing, it just comes to life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, Rihanna Rose.
Right, I have a question. You said that you study using children's shows, but I find that in English, the children's shows use words that don't really exist, or they use like baby words. So do they use those kind of things in Chinese?
Yeah, they use a few, but that's okay. Once you learn more about context and you learn and you pick up eventually where to use what, then it becomes better. So far, it's getting a bit noisy.
Yeah, I can comment on that in the meantime.
Great, yeah. Everybody's talking, but I let Stefan comment.
Right, sorry, I will comment on that in the meantime. When we say baby words, in Chinese, the way how they make baby words is not how we make baby words. Like how we would say PP, right? Instead of osmoregulate or use the washroom or whatever. In Chinese, for example, the word for biscuit or cookie is bingan, right? But to use that as in a baby word, you would say bingangan, right? You reduplicate the gan at the end. I see Grace is Grace is agreeing with me. So you would have to know the word first in order to know what the baby word means. So I don't think it's gonna it would be any trouble using children's programs.
Yeah, so they duplicate and that makes it sound really cute to say something twice in repetition. And that's a technique they use for naming their dogs. Even sometimes when you call your kid, you can use repeated words. But with more exposure, with more input, you will start to learn the context of things. And especially with the goal like making everything in English and Chinese. Like yes, we watch Chinese shows we watch children's shows as children, but we don't. Sometimes we say PP still, but we don't carry that on into certain settings. So if you start to learn, watch more business stuff, you would know that that's for business context.
The baby Chinese, not baby Chinese. Yeah, just like Stefan Rose recommend said that not they actually we don't recommend the baby Chinese, right? So we just recommend encourage parents to say a whole sentence, not so childish words, which can be encouraged. We can be used to encourage the little child to speak soon, speak very quickly. Yeah, yes, just like we just speak very funny, very cute words, not like normal regular Chinese to very small children like less 1 year, less than 1 year old. So if children begin to study Chinese language to speak, to teach them the whole sentence regularly.
Yeah. One thing I found helpful was the it's like those grammar English revise, that kind of program, but for the same UN book. There's actually some videos online going from level 1年级 year 1 to year 6. So then by watching those videos, you will start to be able to pick up things in an academic setting with your limited vocabulary and then begin to grow with it. So that eventually, like if you start to go to level 2, you'll be reading more intense materials. So you can start with.
Rose, if you can use phone, earphone, 你可以用耳机吗? Oh, okay, all right. Very difficult for you to, yeah, thank you. So yeah, so everybody can ask questions. So you can go ahead, Rose, please. Sorry.
Yeah, any more questions?
I have a question, Rose. Can you share with share the PowerPoint with us? Your slides, 你的PowerPoint 可以分享吗?
Yeah, I can share it with you guys, and then I can also, let me see if I can find my Fluency Plan. That should be somewhere in here.
Whether all catch your they become really interesting in your app. The app people can use. The app are all for free. They free to download. Okay, all right, good. I know some, but I don't know they are all. I don't know all. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking right now for the Fluency Plan that I have.
You can probably share here on the chat. Helen raising her hand. Helen, yeah.
Yes, please, Helen.
Hi. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Rose. Good afternoon, everybody. Just a quick question to you, Rose. You know, as you know, any skills, you need the 4 major skills in learning languages and teaching languages. Which skill was the most difficult for you? Is it listening, speaking, reading?
It's definitely speaking, because you need the confidence sometimes to go up to a Chinese person and just know that you sound bad and know that they might not understand you and just go for it. And then when you're trying to piece together grammar and vocabulary in your head at the same time, it becomes very difficult. And my first time talking to probably a Chinese person not feeling confident is true. I tried to ask him if I could swipe my card here because it was a Chinese store, and it was. I don't know what I said wrong, but yeah. But we're friends now, and we speak a lot of Chinese, and I spoke horrible Chinese. Do not be afraid to speak bad Chinese.
Okay.
So,
But speaking is usually the most difficult skill, generally speaking, in any language you're learning, actually. Yeah. Right, but very good job, though.
Yes, please. No, thank you.
Helen, are you going to resume your Chinese study?
I have to find time. I am so overwhelmed with work right now, so I don't know how soon I will be able to go back. I would like to, but I know it calls for a lot of practice.
Practice.
You have to practice. If you don't practice, if you just go to classes and then expect to speak fluently, it doesn't work like that. I mean, I myself being a second language learner too, with English, I know for a fact that if you don't keep up with the grammar, with the, even listening to try to listen to the news, interact with people on a regular basis, and then you go keep looking at the notes and read, do a lot of personal work, that is the problem. I mean, you could go to class, you will probably understand more or less on the spur of the moment, but when you go back home, you realize, oh my God, well, I can't remember what was said, what tone I should have used, and all these things. And I know the tones is one of the most challenging to me. That was one of my most challenging part in the Chinese language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a question. Then continue your Helen's comment. I would like to ask Rose to say something. Why your pronunciation is so good, so natural, like Chinese, and what you would recommend the people who find. So, question is. What is the most difficult pronunciation when you study Chinese, when you begin to learn the pronunciation, the pinyin? So any idea, any advice you can give people?
Okay, I'll give you some of my top advice. So just know that you are saying it wrong. Just know that. Even though I assume that I'm saying everything wrong, and every time I listen to a piece of Chinese audio, I tune it to all. If I listen to tones, I teach myself to hear these variations and the differences with tones. I listen to my own voice, and I try to hear the difference between the Chinese voice and my voice, and I know that I'm wrong, and I know that I have to go over it, and I know that I have to do it, and I know that when I say this out loud, I know that there's parts of my voice that I have to activate that were not activated there because it's half of the world away. I know that I have to build up some muscles that I've never used before. So that is one of the ways that my Chinese pronunciation is so good, because every time I speak, I know that it needs a little more fine tuning. And I've been speaking Chinese for 4 years. Yeah. And I know Stefan is a fan of different accents and dialects. So then he would be able to tell you about differences he hears there. For me, right now, I'm not able to hear the differences between dialects. When I go to China, I will. But there was this one time where I talked to this guy and he was not speaking standard Mandarin, but we were still able to communicate because it was kind of similar, and I was able to pick that up quickly.
Right, thank you, Rose. And one thing I didn't mention just now, I forgot to mention actually. Rose also is a scholarship China scholarship winner this year. She is now studying her master's degree at Peking University this year. So hopefully she has lucky next semester she can come to China.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Rose.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how my Chinese will be if I'm actually in China. It'll probably be so much better, but there's a lot you can still learn from your computer, from your tablet, with free online resources.
So the people can still ask question at the chat part.
Yeah.
So Rose will answer so take the question.
Yeah, any tips,
Yeah.
just let me know.
Okay,
So,
so you can share in the chat part your PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Cool. Yes,
So,
I saw very interesting lot of materials that people can use. Even yes, what I want to say. You said just now you mentioned Lei Kang. He's a friend of CI. He's now in China, and
got married recently.
Yeah, one day, at first I met her when he was here first, so 2019, and then I thought that time his English is not so good. It's not. I don't say so good. His English is not good. Actually, after a while, when he came again to Confucius Institute, he was able to speak very fluently with a native speaker. He's much better than most of us Chinese people. I guess that's because of you, Rose.
We help each other. We help each other a lot.
That's
And
very
he
good.
interacts with
Yeah,
me.
you help each other. His English improved very quickly, and your Chinese in the same thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
We set off each other's
Yes,
energy.
that's the key, I think. Thank you. Yeah.
Just let me share this one. Some fundamental skills. These are some resources that I found. Listen to this for X times a day, read some of this. I found my resources, I organized them, I made an action plan. Then some further studying, app study, movie study, book study, repeat out loud some things, advanced studying. I haven't gotten here yet. And idioms, literature, poetry, even philosophy.
You're very
Yeah.
active in speaking, in learning. And I know one time you told me you study Chinese for fun.
Yeah, it's for fun. It's all for fun. It's because it's hard. I like challenge, so let's go.
Play, like
Let's do
play.
it. Yeah.
Okay. So this part, you finish your part?
Yes, please. Thank you,
okay.
guys.
Thank you. So you are now, I know you are now working, and then take your time. Thank you. And I think I saw David here. Hi, welcome, David.
Hi, hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. Yeah, we are now thank you for joining us.
You are welcome. Excellent presentation.
Yes,
Excellent.
true.
Presentation.
Okay, now,
Thank you.
yeah. All right. So we can let Lord Stefan take the floor. Welcome.
Thank you.
Stefan.
Thank you very much, Grace, and Shangri Kwaila to you. Good evening, everyone. Firstly, some shout outs. I want to shout out Erin Jordan, who is in the chat, my friend for 16 years. Shout out to Rodney. I've not seen Rodney in a couple of years, but we met in Beijing at Caesarea, the Italian restaurant. You remember, Rodney?
Yeah, most definitely.
Oh my goodness. Take us back, Lord. Take us back. I want to shout out as well Nanette. Nanette was my first Black friend in China, right? And now she is also a Chinese teacher in Antigua and Barbuda. So she is more exciting than I am. So imagine that. Imagine that.
Definitely.
Your friend?
You got them from Taobao? Yes, Nanette is my friend from Antigua and Barbuda. All right, so if I am allowed to share my screen, I will do so. My presentation is on amazing Chinese characters, and hopefully by the end of this class, you should be able to recognize all the characters in this background. I am kidding. All right, so a little bit about me first. I love Chinese characters. That's me behind there. I am Stefan Lord. That is my age, 25-ish. I've been studying Mandarin since 2013. My first degree was in linguistics at the University of the West Indies, Gayfield campus. And then as Rose said earlier, not Rose, as Grace said earlier, I did a Bachelor of Arts degree in Chinese Studies at the Beijing Language and Culture University. Best time of my life. I'm now back here in Barbados, fortunately or unfortunately, as a volunteer teacher at the Confucius Institute. As Grace would have also mentioned, I was accepted to do my English to Chinese translation master's degree at BLCU. Was accepted already, and I shall commence that in the following fall semester. All right, so what are Chinese characters besides lines and squares and tic-tac-toe signs? All right, and Chinese characters or Hanzi are the logograms associated with the Chinese language. We know what a logo is. Like, for example, you see a swish or a tick, you know that is that particular brand of wear. You see the swastika, you know what that stands for. You see the cross, you know what that stands for. So what Chinese characters are these signs and combinations of signs that express meaning. Yeah, you would have heard it. You would have heard it said that Chinese children are smarter, right? It is not that they're smarter; is that they're taught to understand meaning from the time they could read. So they look at this character here. This character here is ting, meaning to listen. And if you look at the side, you have here on the right, on the left, you have an ear. You have your mind. You have your heart. One. This is character for one, for undivided attention, and you use your eyes to focus. Yeah. So there's a lot more going on with the word here than what we actually know from the letters H, E, A, R. Yes. So the challenge comes, or the difference is that while we as toddlers in the Western world are taught A to Z and are taught how things sound, how words sound, the Chinese are taught what things mean in terms of their characters. And the language is logographic. What you see is what you get in terms of meaning. So in English, you can read an entire sentence. There's nothing like a fusillade of acroleptic verbiage to make the most puerile asseverations seem the acme of sagacious perspicacity fluently and don't understand a word, right? However, in Chinese, you can look at characters, you might not be able to pronounce how the characters sound, but you know what they mean. And then it comes to reading, which is more important? Okay, which is more important? Meaning is more important. So where did they come from? Where did the Chinese characters come from, as opposed to where did the ice cream truck come from? That's not embarrassing at all. So as you see here on the left, we have something that looks like an elephant, right? And then we have something that looks like a drawing of an elephant, similar, but it has less detail in it, and it's a lot smaller. And then the shape of it changes until it gets to what we see here on the far right as the Chinese character that we use today. Like most ancient languages, Chinese characters as we know them today originated as pictographs. As the language evolved and more complex ideas needed to be expressed, the Chinese needed to make their orthography or their writing system easier. So what I'm gonna go through this later as well. Like I said before, there are characters that represent ideas. For example, this character here, which means elephant, and you can tell that it means elephant because the first character that it looked like was an elephant. So if I'm writing in a cave or on a bamboo shoot or on a stone 5,000 years ago about an elephant chasing me, all I have to do is draw a little stick man, right? And then draw an elephant behind it and perhaps draw a frown on my face or something to show that I'm in trouble. But that's a simple sentence or a simple idea to express. What happens when you want to express something like the? You want to express something like desire, like covetousness, like anger. What do you do with these intangible ideas? How do you express that? Yeah, and we will go on to understand how. We'll go on to understand how. All right, so we go from these 6 evolutionary stages of the Chinese character, and the Chinese characters originated in what we call, in the first step, they're the oracle bone fragments, which are when they had bones of animals, they would write or carve the character in those bones. Some of them also, you cut a bamboo in half and you write on the inside of the bamboo. And then later on, as you see here, the seal fragment number 2, when pottery when pottery was a thing and metal work was a thing, and you were working with brass and all kinds of different metals to make pots and pans and different ornaments around the household, characters were engraved in those as well. And as you can tell from how it looks, like for example, the one here under seal, it would not be very easy to use a stick to carve that in, for example, a turtle shell, right? And then you see here from the clerical down to the standard, from the clerical, the cursive, semi-cursive, and standard, these were all written with brushes made from animal fur and different fibers. Yeah. So as you see, for example, the cursive looks nothing like the seal. The clerical looks nothing like the semi-cursive. And these are fonts that had evolved over the millennia, really, to get to the point, to get to where we are today, this standard one. Yes. So whereas my favorite one, if I had to choose one, when I studied calligraphy in China, the seal, this one, Xiaojuan, this one was my favorite. You can actually, well, as you study Chinese and got familiar with the characters, if you tilt your head on the side and squint for a little bit, you can actually see the remnants of the pictograph of what it originally looked like. Yes. For example, if you remember that this is a dragon, you would see, for example, this last stroke down here could look like a tail. And then these three things on the side could either be ribs or feet, depending on who's writing it, right? And the standard one at the end is whenever you're learning Chinese calligraphy, that is the one that they will teach you. That's the one that they will teach you. This is, as you see, this is the standard, the last step in Chinese character evolution before the invention of the press. How did they get here? Aaliyah Rose would have shared this photo already. We use the same resources, namely Google. So you have here the picture of what it is. This is how they would have originated. Now, like I said before, most of the ancient languages of the world started with pictures. Like I don't imagine cavemen bonking each other's heads with a club and then say, oh, and then write the letters S-U-N on a wall. It doesn't make sense. They would have drawn pictures. I think, in my estimation, now that I've studied Chinese, pictographic languages are actually more efficient at expressing ideas than characters with letters like English. Right? That's just my personal opinion. You can fight me afterwards. But you see the picture here. The reason pictographic languages are more efficient is that no matter which country or culture or history or time you've come from, this thing here, as soon as you look at it, you know it is that big thing in the sky. Whether you call it the sun or the taiyang or le soleil or whatever, it is that big thing in the air. So when the Chinese are expressing that, they just draw it. Of course, most, if not all, ancient languages had that orthography, but because Chinese was only spoken by Chinese in China at that particular location for 5,000 years, they didn't have, like, for example, English, a history like English, where the language itself moved across land and picked up words as it went along. You realize that 80% of the verbs in English come from French. A lot of all the words that we have, I think 30% of our entire lexicon comes from all over the place, right? And that's why we have words like bar mitzvah and schnitzel and kindergarten and all those borrowed words. Chinese has borrowed words too, but they borrow it and like what you would call Chineseify it, put characters on it to make it look like what it is supposed to mean. If they can't find a character to make it look like what it's supposed to mean, they're going to find a character to make it look like how it's supposed to sound. And that's even more interesting. Yeah. So we have these pictures here, the sun, the moon, trees, mountains, water, fields, and doors. All cultures had that. All cultures had that. So they had no need to change it. They had no need to change it. Why would you replace this picture of a mountain that a 4-year-old can look at and understand that it's a mountain to MOUNTAIN? Well, it doesn't make sense. So they kept the language as is, and they just made it more and more modern as the millennia went on. Strokes. No, not the thing that kills 2 Barbadians per day, but we mean the order in which these characters are written, not drawn, written. This is in my estimation, the perfect character to explain how the strokes are written. Yeah, and it may be a little confusing, but each character is made up of strokes, and each stroke has a name, and each name has a character. Right? Let that bake your noodle. Every Chinese character is made up of strokes. These strokes absolutely always ever have to be written in the exact same order, length, and thickness all the time. Otherwise, there will be trouble. Yeah, and I will show you how that could be trouble later on when I get my drawing pad, which should be soon. All right, so we have a small 10-minute video, and then we will get to the practical side of my presentation. Seeing as there are no questions thus far, I will continue. Yes, sorry.
Horse, car, fish, eye, mountain.
Can we all hear?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
These glyphs may not seem familiar to you, but you've certainly met their descendants. We've all seen Chinese characters before, whether on the menu of your local Chinese restaurant or on the back of a gym enthusiast that had a spiritual awakening during their last backpacking trip in Asia. We can understand the appeal these logograms have. Chinese writings are beautifully designed and have an air of wisdom to them. But there's more to Chinese characters than aesthetics. They're a reflection of 3,000 years of cultural evolution. But when did these symbols become part of the Chinese language? And how have they evolved over the years? You're watching Explore Mode, and today we're diving into the history of Chinese characters. To the unknowing eye, Chinese characters may seem like a confusing collection of lines and boxes, but they're not just random strokes. Each character carries deep meaning. You just need to know how to interpret them. Think about Chinese characters like Lego blocks. Chinese words are built part by part. Usually, one part represents the meaning, the radical, and the other pronunciation. There are a lot of basic characters that can stand alone, like water, 水, heart, 心, and mouth, 口. Others are built from left to right, like the word for good, 好, which depicts a mother with her child, symbolizing goodness or happiness. Some are built from top to bottom, like the word for grass, 草, which has the radical for grass at the top and the word for early, 早, at the bottom, which gives it its pronunciation. And others are written from the outside in, like the word for stuffy, 闷, which shows a heart within a door, symbolizing a person feeling muggy and trapped behind closed doors. The oldest form of Chinese writing dates back to 1200 BCE, in the late years of the Shang dynasty. These early inscriptions are called oracle bone scripts, 甲骨文. As you might have guessed from the name, oracle bone scripts, known in Chinese as 甲骨文, were used for divination purposes. Inquirers would engrave their questions on an ox scapula or tortoise shells, which were then handed to a diviner. The diviner would heat up the bone until it cracked and interpret an answer depending on where the fissures grew. Questions at the time covered a wide range of topics, from military campaign strategies to hunting expeditions and dream interpretations. These early Chinese pictograms can still be linked to modern Chinese characters. Take this oracle bone question about the weather as an example. The characters can still be easily translated and understood in modern Chinese. The similarities are even more apparent in highly pictographic characters like water, 水, fire, 火, person, 人, and tree or wood, 木. See what we're talking about? Oracle bones almost got crushed to extinction. During the 19th century, farmers dug out a number of oracle bone scripts and confused them with fossils from the Pleistocene that, at the time, were crushed and sold as Chinese medicine to treat malaria and knife wounds. The story goes that in 1899, some oracle bones were sold to Wang Yirong, the chancellor of the Imperial Academy in Beijing, who happened to be a collector of Chinese bronzes, which also bear ancient Chinese scriptures. Upon further inspection of the bones that had been sold to him, he recognized these too had ancient Chinese writings on them. After his death in the year 1900, his collection of oracle bones was passed on to his son, who sold it to a Chinese archaeologist named Liu Yi. Liu would go on to publish rubbings of several oracle bone scripts, bringing the ancient scripture to the attention of international scholars. The rest is history. Chinese scripts found on oracle bones and bronze scripts were already quite advanced and functional for their time, but the characters were often inconsistent. Spanning through the late Zhou dynasty to Qin dynasty, roughly from 221 to 106 BCE, the seal script Chinese form, or 篆书, was developed. It was much more uniform in size and style, while still maintaining a pictographic essence, following elongated strokes and square shapes. These characters were typically carved onto stone or jade to create imperial seals. The first imperial seal was carved onto white jade and was commissioned by the first emperor of a unified China, Qin Shi Huangdi, after he defeated the other warring states. The Qin dynasty lasted just 36 years, but it is one of the most culturally influential dynasties in Chinese history. One of Qin Shi Huang's greatest projects was the construction of the Great Wall of China. Before his reign, there were pieces of the wall built by past emperors in different regions, but it was Qin who connected large stretches of them. Other dynasties after his would follow suit, creating the large fortification system we know of today. Another of Qin's historical legacies is his tomb. In 1974, unsuspecting farmers were digging a well in Shanxi, China, when they unearthed the clay head of what seemed to be an ancient Chinese warrior. Now we know them as the Terracotta Army Warriors, a collection of 8,000 soldiers built specifically to guard Qin's tomb and protect him in his afterlife. But it wasn't just soldiers. Qin's mausoleum contains cavalry horses, acrobats, chariots, and musicians, each of which was unique in their design. These sculptures helped historians and archaeologists study the craftsmanship of this time, as well as military rankings and even the chemical components of the paint used to decorate the sculptures. Seal script was very beautiful and it served its ornamental purpose well, but it wasn't very convenient when it came to producing official documents quickly. This is where the first modern version of Chinese characters began to develop, beginning with Clerical Script. Clerical Script, or Li Shu, appeared around 206 BCE to 220 AD. It was a much more simplified version of the seal script, replacing curves and circles with straight lines and squares. Clerical Script would later evolve into the regular Chinese script we know today, without much changes other than the simplification of strokes. But the evolution of Chinese characters didn't stop there. Time for an Express Explorer explanation. Start the clock. Nowadays, there are two versions of modern Chinese characters: traditional characters used in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau, and simplified characters used in mainland China, Singapore, and Malaysia. The simplification of Chinese characters began in 1956, when, in an effort to raise literacy rates in the country, which was at 20% when the Communist Party took over, Chinese officials began releasing and promoting documents containing simplified versions of Chinese characters. Characters were simplified by decreasing the number of strokes per character. Sometimes this meant removing parts of the character, other times it meant rewriting it into a simpler form. But the simplified versus traditional debate goes beyond education. Many traditional Chinese supporters feel that much of the meaning and artistry behind each character was stripped away during the simplification process. Take the word love, or I, as an example. At the center of the character in traditional Chinese is the character for heart. In the simplified version, the heart is taken away. A more drastic change can be seen in the Chinese word for listen, ting. The traditional version has the character for ear, heart, eyes, and a line separating the heart and eyes to symbolize undivided attention, meaning that to truly listen, one's heart, eyes, and ears have to give undivided attention to whom or what we're listening to. Now, look at the simplified version, which was completely modified from the original. The character on the left is mouth, 口, and the character on the right is jin, a unit of measurement for weight. No connection can be made between the pictogram and the actual meaning of the word. But Chinese officials weren't just looking to simplify characters. They wanted to create a romanized version of their pronunciations that would help globalize the language. So Mao Zedong tasked Zhou Youguang, an economist turned linguist, with this mission, an offer he could not refuse, literally. Chinese characters were almost completely eliminated by Mao Zedong in mainland China, until an unlikely historical figure advised him against it. Before Mao rolled out the complete reformation of traditional characters, he was contemplating completely romanizing the Chinese language. That is, according to Zhou, until he met with Joseph Stalin in 1949. Mao shared his Chinese writing reform plans with him and asked Stalin for his advice. According to a memoir by Mao's personal secretary, Stalin told Mao, quote, "You're a great country, and you should have your own Chinese alphabet. You shouldn't simply use the Latin alphabet." It took Zhou and a team of linguists 3 years to develop the pronunciation guide we now know as Hanyu Pinyin, based on the Zhuyin Fuhao, the original Chinese phonetic guide. Zhou's guide has now become the most widely used Chinese romanization system in China and around the world, successfully facilitating the dissemination of Mandarin Chinese. Nowadays, 1.117 billion people in the world speak Mandarin Chinese, and with China expanding as an economic powerhouse, there's no doubt that number will increase. Are you up for the challenge? Thanks for watching Explore Mode. If you liked this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you want to explore even more with us, check out this video we made on tarot cards and their origin. Before you leave, make sure to hit the subscribe and bell button so you can...
Alrighty. So I hope that that was as inspirational to you as it was to me to learn as many Chinese characters as you possibly can, right? All right, so now I have the pleasure of showing you more about the Chinese characters, but practically, not in a distant way that we had just now with the PowerPoint presentation. All right, first we have the, I want to take up Aaliyah Rose's challenge on the most difficult character.
Good luck.
All right. Let me see if I can, I'm gonna try not to look at the book or anything. All right. And Grace, you can let me know how I'm doing.
Why? I cannot. There's too many strokes. I know I can recognize it, but I cannot write. I don't know how to write it. Oh, you are me.
Oh, wow.
Very good.
Sorry,
Excellent.
making poor Grace shame.
Oh my gosh. Perfect. Yes. Oh.
All right.
Fun.
I think, Grace, you can tell me if that's wrong or right.
I know I can, because I don't know how to write.
Okay. Well, you think it's right?
Yeah.
Once you think it's right, we are cool. Once you think it's right, we are cool. All right.
The person can tell whether it's right or wrong.
But I didn't feel like if I messed up anything, so I will just assume that it was right. And if anybody has any questions or comments about that, feel free to message me afterwards about that. But yes, so this character, Biang, this character was invented by a middle school teacher. I think it was a middle school teacher. It was invented, and it doesn't have a meaning other than this is what you write 1,000 times if you are late for my class. So you don't know who's showing up at 3:45 in the morning to his class, because I am writing this 1,000 times. I get 2 gray hairs just writing it once, right? Anyway, so let us continue with simpler characters. Now we talked about the characters, what they are, how they are represented, what their origins are, etc. But how do they work? How do they work? Like I said before, they're very, very simple. At least the one, not any that I've drawn so far, but they're very, very simple. And they have patterns to them that they are immediately visible as soon as you start learning Chinese at any period of time. Take, for example, the number 1, right? You cannot get any simpler than that. 1 stroke, left to right, boom, that is the number 1, right? If I had candy, I would hand out candy to anybody who could guess what the number 2 looks like. Don't all jump up at once. It is 2 strokes. And if my reception children at Charles F. Broome can figure this out, so can you. Yeah. And I asked them, so what's the difference with these 2 lines? One of them longer, right? And it's like, okay, good. Which one is longer? The one at the bottom. Never forget it. Because if you write the top one longer, that character does not exist. Nobody knows what that is, right? It does not exist. You will not even handwriting recognition software would get that, right? And then, so if 1 is 1 stroke and 2 is 2 strokes, 3 would obviously be 3 strokes, obviously. But you see the difference in the stroke length, and it must be written medium, short, long every time you write it, otherwise it's wrong, right? So when we were learning this at school, there was a story accompanied the lesson of a little boy who was learning how to write, and he wrote 1. The teacher came over and taught him how to write the number 1, and then taught him how to write the number 2, and then taught him how to write the number 3. And then he's like, oh, this is simple. I don't need a teacher any longer. And he got rid of the teacher. And his father, who didn't know any better, was like, okay, good. My son is obviously quite smart. He finished the classes early. Lo and behold, there's a guy who is coming over, a friend of his father's coming over. And the father says, write an invitation to my friend. His name is Mr. Wan. Now, Wan, for those of you who haven't studied Chinese, means 10,000. It just sounds like 1. So, of course, the boys spend all weekend writing, dear Mr. Wan. But fortunately for us, when this pattern only stops at 3, right? You get 4, which is that, and then 5, which is that, and they change as you go along. So you don't have to write 10,000 lines to, like the poor little boy in my story, to express 10,000. All right, we're gonna keep that pattern there. This happens not only with numbers, but other characters as well. Take the word one of the words that we saw in the video just now. Jeune, which means person. Jeune, which means person. And you only have to look at the character to answer the question, how many persons are we talking about? Right? One, because it's only one. If, however, I take that, just like how we have one stroke here and two strokes there, if I take that character and duplicate it, then we have two persons. And you can see these are the legs of the people down here. We have two persons. Now, anybody, feel free to respond. What do you think that character means to have a person right behind somebody else? A word beginning with F.
There's answer from.
Oh, somebody said, somebody said to me, follow. Yes, and that is what it is, follow. It means from as well, more abstractly, but immediately it means follow. You have one person right behind another, right? Abstractly, if you use that word tong, for example, at the front of a sentence, tong this place to this place. So following from this place to that place. So it still carries that connotation. So from is not wrong, just not as accurate as follow. Then you have three persons. It is a lot simpler than you think. Two is company, three is a what?
Party.
Three is a crowd, thank you. Yes, but depending on how you like the party, then it could mean party as well. Three is a crowd. So you see how, and I think this can also mean audience, but you see how the pattern follows. One is this, two is a little bit more of what one is, and then three is a lot more of what one is. Yeah, two more examples. Two more because they are like my favorite examples. I love Chinese characters, as you can tell. Next, we have this one. And I asked my kids at Charles F. Broome, what does this look like? And they're guessing all over the place. And I said, okay, cool. What does it look like now? And then you heard the, right? And that to me is the greatest thing about being a teacher, just seeing the information hit them like a ton of bricks. And they made that, right? So this is the word mu, meaning tree. It also means wood, but wood comes from tree, so it meant tree first, fight me. So you have mu, meaning tree. And that is one. What happens when I duplicate it? No, I don't blame you for not being able to guess this, because we don't have any in Barbados. I see people going for forest. Any other guesses?
Jungle.
Interesting guess. There we go. Somebody guessed woods. Woods. So well, if you want to translate the first one to wood, then the second one will be woods. And then, of course, what happens when you reduplicate it to 3. And we would have mentioned that already. That is the word for forest. Because a forest is enough trees, right? One more example, and I pray nobody throw any shoes at me for this example. So you know it can be dangerous and controversial, right? We have the character for woman. And people who know me are going to say, oh dear, at this point. This is the character new for woman.
Oh dear.
Very good. New for woman. And what do you think happens when you get 2 women together? I anxious to see y'all guesses. What is
Gossip.
Ah, okay. People are saying gossip. Apparently, and unfortunately, it's not Beijing women, it's Chinese women. So the word is a quarrel or argument. You know, and for those of you who watch a lot of back when we had all those, when cell phones first come out, with the cell phones with the cameras first come out, and you're seeing the girls fighting at school and pulling out other people's hair and all that sort of stuff. When you put the 2 women together, that's what happens. At least this character is archaic, so it's not used as much anymore. So you don't have to throw any shoes at Chinese people for this. All right. Lastly, this is being recorded, Daniel Hines, so I can't even be dangerous. This is 3 women together. This is this describes a man, believe it or not. What do you think a character with 3 women in it can mean describing a man?
A wholesome fellow.
Daniel Hines, that was you? I'm sure that was Daniel Hines, you know. Somebody says a pimp. Very, very close. Very, very close. Adulterer. Very, very close. Adulterer. Because I mean, if you're gonna be whatless, why stop at 2 women, right? Go straight for the 3. Not that I'm encouraging that here. So you have the characters, how they look, expressing what they mean. You have the characters that are duplicated, where one means one thing, 2 means another thing, and 3 means another thing. That is the end of that section. Only so much trouble I can give in one presentation. Next, we have what is most interesting to me is the combination of characters. We looked at how the characters operate on their own. We looked at how the characters operate duplicated. And now finally, we look at how the characters look combined, how they work combined. Now, stick a pin first. Remember how before I would have mentioned that the characters always, ever, only have to be written in the exact same way all the time, forever. Otherwise, you're going to make a huge mistake. Here's why. We have, for example, the character for dry. Undo. The character for dry. Right? And this, when I say dry, I mean, when you put your clothes out to dry, this is the word you use, that word dry. Right? You see how it looks. Next to that, we're going to write another word. Now it's time to spot the difference. You notice that one of the strokes, namely this one here at the top, is slanted coming down, whereas the corresponding character on the opposing side, they're parallel to each other. So this one here is the word for dry, and this one here is the word for thousand. Lord, I can't spell. Right, that's the word for thousand. So could you imagine the headache that will come when you accidentally write the wrong character, when you accidentally miss a stroke, or when, so this is why you have to write it in a particular character, or in a particular stroke order all the time. Because if you don't, if you decide to write it as you feel like, then symbols as complicated as Chinese characters, if you do not find a way to regulate how they are written, then everybody writes it how they feel like, and then the character is going to look different every time somebody writes it. Yeah, like you can imagine we write our capital N's, how we write our capital N's. If somebody writes their N like that, we automatically think, wait, hold on a minute, something is wrong with that letter. That's not an N, that's something else. That's 80% of an M, you know, or 80% of a W. That's missing something. Or a Q. Q's don't look like that, or Q's don't look like this. So you can imagine now, every time you write the letter Q, so the languages are not that different in terms of their principles. Every time you write the letter Q, it has to be written like that. And you see, we write the circle first and then the little tail at the end. Imagine how awkward it would feel trying to write the tail first. So just like that, the characters in Chinese have those rules of orthography, and they must be followed. Otherwise, you can end up writing the wrong thing, making a fool of us all. All right, so now back to the combination of characters. And I'm going to use mostly the characters that we would have seen in the video, not that I expect people who haven't studied them to remember which characters those are. But my favorite one is, we have the character for person, which we learned just now, or which we looked at just now, plus the character for tree, right? And you get the idea of a person leaning against a tree. You get the idea of a person very, very close, leaning against the tree. Now, you can imagine a man leaning on a tree with his back to the tree, his hands are folded, eyes closed, looking up to the sky, or head tilted up to the sky. What is this man doing? A word beginning with R. Excellent. He is resting. Lord have mercy. Right. So that is the character for rest. That is the character for rest. So the character for rest literally is a man leaning on a tree. A man leaning on a tree. I think somebody put in the right. Somebody put in the, I think it was Nanette that put in the chat, this other one. So the character, these two characters mean rest in total. Xiu xi, xiu xi. And this is a man leaning on a tree. And this part here at the top, it means self. 字 means self. And the word here at the bottom, as we saw from the video, means heart. So literally, go and lean upon that tree there and relax your heart. Like serious, like that's what it is. How convenient, how fun, how interesting, how challenging is a language that literally says what it means all the time, right? So that's number one. Xiu. Number two is another visual one. You have the word, this is a body part here. The word hand, show, the word hand. And then we add that to another body part, which is mu, which means I. And you see why we need characters, because this character up top here is also called mu, right? It's like bear and bear. So we have the character for hand and the character for I. And what happens when you put your hand above your eye? What are you doing? Right? So something goes on over there. You put your hand over your eye. What are you doing? A word beginning with L. Good. You are looking. So this is the word for look. Right? This word is kan, meaning to look. So you see that you can, if you're showing these pictures to a child, you're showing these pictures to a child, or even an adult, like most of us. Once you see the pictures and you put them together, every single time a Chinese person looks at this character, they are imagining somebody doing this. And then you don't have to imagine any longer, you just see it, literally, no pun intended. It just comes alive to you. You look at a Chinese text, and the meaning of the words jumps out at you. The meaning of the words jumps out at you. As opposed to English, where the sound of the words jumps out at you and you still don't know what it means. You still don't know what it means. So for those of you who want that challenge, Chinese is there waiting for you to take it up. Yes, one last one, and then I believe that is it. We have, and this is going to be, oh dear, and this is going to be a little different. We have an animal. Now, this is an animal that's lying down on its side. I'll give you some hints as to what this animal is. It's lying down on its side, and these strokes coming down here look like it's children milking from it. What animal does this look like? Okay, good. Pig. So it looks like a pig lying down and little piglets nursing. Then we take it and we put a roof over it. We put a roof over it. So literally this is a pig under a roof. And believe it or not, this is the character for home. Home is where the pork is. Home is where the pork is. So because as we know that in Chinese culture, they eat a lot of pork. One of the many reasons I moved there. The pig is a huge animal, produces a lot of meat, and then it gives birth to 8 and 10 and 12 piglets at a time, which will all grow up to be pigs, which will all produce a lot of meat. So you can feed a lot of people with pork. Whereas with lamb, a ewe lamb would give birth to a sheep. A ewe would give birth to a lamb, sorry, I don't know, once every couple of months. So by the time you finish eat that one lamb, you and your 5 children, all the meat gone. Whereas a pig, got up one pig, you can feed 5 people for months, right? So that's why that character there means what it means, because you can feed your entire family with the meat from a pig. So literally a pig under your roof is not your eldest son, not your estranged husband, but your home. This means of taking care of your family. Yeah. So with this word, 家, this word here meaning home, you can, as opposed to, in addition to combining characters together to make new ones, you can also combine other characters with other characters. So you can have two characters to mean something totally different, as opposed to borrowing a word from another language, like what English does. Chinese would take the two words that mean what it is in whatever language, put them together, and make the whole new word from scratch in Chinese using Chinese. So for example, we have this word 家. If you take this character and add person to it, 家人, it is a family person or a family member or a person in your family. If you take the character for old, 老, and add it to the front of that word, 老家, old home, it is the place that you grew up. So whether you remained there or you left and went somewhere else, no matter where you go, where you would have grown up is your old home, your 老家. And then when you get even bigger in when you get even bigger and you take the character for country, 国, and you add it to 家, that is 国家, meaning nation. Yeah. So similarly to English, where you would have nat, right? And from nat you can have like nation and national and international, right? And nativity. How we have that root word with all of these suffixes and prefixes around it. The Chinese works the same way, but with adding other characters before and after it as well. All right, so to recap, we learned what the characters are, where they came from, what do they mean, how do they work, and how do they combine to give more meanings, more abstract meanings, and even more concrete meanings. All right, are there any questions at all?
Thank you, Stefan. Very good presentation. Thank you. I enjoy it. I hope everybody is the same thing. even I don't know some of the knowledge. Thank you so much. Okay, so any questions from the audience? So they're very interesting topic. I hope everybody can continue explore the amazing Chinese character.
Yeah, Nanette, you have a question?
Yes, I do. It's more of a statement, actually. I would like to say, Losafan, I am very impressed by your presentation. You know, as a Chinese teacher myself, I just expected to come and, you know, support you, but I learned so many things that I can apply to my classroom. And I just want to say thank you for that. You were like interesting from the start, because to be honest, I had some other things I had to do, but when I start listening to you, I said, wait, this is getting serious. And I had to pack everything and just had to listen to everything you're saying to the end. So 你做得很好，非常好。还是有一个问题 still have a question, okay? 你的 PPT 能发给我吗？
能啊，能啊。
好，非常好 thank you. Okay, that's all from me.
All right, thank you. I see Daniel.
Yes, sir. I just want to say I'm really impressed where you have come from in terms of development in Chinese. I remember when you showed the interest to go, and I I, I actually I lost words because I can't believe, you know, this is the same guy who was telling me, yes, I want to go to China, and had all this zeal to go, you know. And it's just great to see where you've come. So I don't know, 恭喜发财, right? That's all. All right. Have a good one.
Thank you so very much, Daniel. Thank you. Renee, I think you also raised your hand.
Oh, it wasn't raised. I was just clapping as usual. It was
Oh,
a
oh,
brilliant
oh.
presentation, and
Thank you
for
so
somebody
much.
that you know, I do characters because I have to, not for our love of it.
Oh.
It was always interesting to see it presented this way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, people can write to Confucius Institute at cavehill.uwi.edu to have some more requests. So this video this afternoon we have been recorded, and if people want to see more clearly, get more information, you can write to request. Thank you all. So this afternoon, we have another very wonderful, informative session, which is our last session of Cultural Club, Chinese Corner. Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Rose, for not very interesting presentation. Very good. Good job. This is the second time for our local teacher. Purely, yeah, all done by our local teachers' presentation. Very good job. Thank you so much. Okay, all right. That's all for today. Goodbye, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Goodbye. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Good weekend. Thank you.
再见. Bye bye.
再见. 再见.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Sun, you're here. Okay, bye bye. 再见，罗斯凡。拜拜。
再见，老师。